Well, I think there might be one or two other folks coming in here. This is just going to be as interactive as possible. This is the first time I've ever actually done this format, so I'm super excited. And it's just awesome, honestly, to have all of you guys come out in Snowmageddon or whatever we had today, Slushmageddon today to get here. And so it's just honestly a huge honor and privilege to talk in front of you guys tonight. So we'll do a couple housekeeping items, but first and foremost, I know you all just sat down, but I'm going to need you to stand up again. And you need to make sure that you have enough like arm room here that you don't hurt yourself or anyone else. So just arm length, right? Roy's got it. He's good back there. If you need to step out a little bit, that's fine. Just make sure you're good. We're going to do something that's going to bond all of us together and make you super uncomfortable at the same time. Okay, so what we're going to do is something that we haven't had an opportunity to do as much because we've had to do all this COVID craziness. We're going to dance. Okay, we're going to dance for 30 seconds, and I need to see your best dance move, right? The one that you do, like your go-to move. Yeah, Nels is going to be a part of this with me. Okay? Are you ready for 30 seconds? Nels didn't know this ahead of time. 3, 2, 1, best dance move. Here we go. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Oh yeah. You can do a little sprinkler if you want to, right? Oh, he's got the lawnmower. Yep. Same thing on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, you guys got to be dancing, right? Oh, oh, some Macarena. Is that what you got going on over there? I can get it. Yeah. All right. Oh. 30. Yeah. You guys are amazing dancers. You got to give yourself a little hand here. I hope for you guys on Zoom you were dancing in your chair, whatever you decided to do. But I just want to have a little bit of fun with y'all. Plus, I always need to know new dance moves. I don't have any rhythm whatsoever, so I need all the help I can get. We get to be here at Casa tonight because of all these amazing people back here. Kristen, I want to say thank you for helping set this up. KJ, you guys run an amazing program. Who's familiar with Casa and what they do? So Rose is like, yes, I know. Casa stands for Court-Appointed Special Advocates. And these guys do amazing work. They really speak on the behalf of children who can't speak for themselves. Right? They're the ones who are really going into some really tough situations. And it's not always the easiest thing that you guys do. But how many advocates do you guys have, KJ, up here in North Idaho Casa?
Right today, 113.
113? Wow. Yeah, incredible. So incredible work that you guys do. Thank you so much for letting us use your space. And if you're looking for an organization to either give back to, whether that be with your own funds or whether it might be just with your time, connect with these folks. They do, again, amazing work. So thank you guys very much. Appreciate you. And I'm on the board, full disclosure. I'm really invested in Casa, and I really love these guys. So yeah, we love you guys a ton. We're going to do one other exercise before we get started. So I brought you way up. I'm going to have us kind of ground for a second. So I'm going to have you close your eyes. You guys have to close your eyes at home as well if you're on Zoom. Henry, my tech team. I didn't get to introduce my tech team. I'm sorry. Just open your eyes again. I have a thing here and I get all off. I'm going to introduce my wife really quickly. For those of you on Zoom, I'm really sorry you won't be able to see Kelly, my beautiful wife, who's helping us on the tech side. My son Henry, my son Elliot, and then Oliver over here on the camera. So, you employ the best. You employ, teenagers and tweens, right, to help you because they know how tech works, right? So they're helping us out tonight. So close your eyes for a moment. I just want you to think about one of the most compelling things that I can think of, which is a fire. So you're sitting next to a fireplace. Maybe it's the one that you grew up, and maybe it's the one that you just kind of comes to mind. And in front of you is a fire that is roaring. It's not just like the baby stages of just starting out. It's not, hey, you're adding a couple longs onto it. It's literally, man, I can't even get too close to this thing or I might get burnt, right? And the glow from that fire is just like, it's mesmerizing, right? Like you don't want to take your eyes off of it. It's a light and a heat that inspires you to say, man, this is bigger than me. Right? So I want you to open your guys' eyes up. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional on that. I believe each and every one of us has a fire like that inside of us. That's how we're built to be, is to have that fire and that light. And sometimes, there's 3 different types of people here in this room tonight. You might be that person where you're like, hey, that fire was there a while ago. It's not really there anymore. Like, I've barely got some of the embers going. I'm on the last little gasps here, right? You might be a person who your fire's going, but you know it's going to take more, especially in this next year, for you to keep that fire going. You're going to need a couple logs on that fire to help it be bright, to help provide that warmth that's needed. Or you may be in that third camp and you're like, I'm literally on fire right now, right? I'm living out my passion. I know who I am, but I also know that it's going to take the right conditions for that fire to keep going, right? So you're in one of those 3 different groups. I won't ask you to raise your hand on which one you are, but I want you to think about that for a moment, about where you're at in one of those 3 different categories as we move forward together tonight. So why in the world am I doing this? I've been asking myself that for the past couple months because I've never done anything like this before. Some of you guys know, you're friends with me on Facebook, or obviously my Idaho Central friends here who are representing me tonight in the house. Thank you guys so much. I'm leaving Idaho Central. I've been there 13 years. I've grown up in Idaho Central. I've become the leader I am today because of Idaho Central Credit Union. And my goal is to inspire leaders. That's my whole goal. And to do what I've been able to do at Idaho Central outside of it. And the only way that I can do that is to do things like this. I'm working with leaders directly, one-on-one, working with business leaders and owners to really kind of honestly kind of capture the same type of culture that I've been blessed to be a part of. And so that's what I'm going to bring to you tonight, is a couple of things that I've learned along the way. And as I've gone back in time and said, man, what are some of the big key areas that have really been an impact to me as a leader? What are some of the big things that have really stood out to me that's helped me make a difference? And then how do I approach it personally, right? We all have our own personal leadership journey. Who would consider themselves a leader here in this room? Just a raise of hands. Okay. This is a trick question. You're all leaders. Hopefully everybody online said that as well, right? If you didn't raise your hand, Josh, I'm just going to pick on you for a second, right? If you didn't say you're a leader, what's one of the reasons you would say that?
I would say just structurally,
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time kind of in the listening thing. I'm always like, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth,
Uh-huh.
So I try to think, in that frame of mind.
Right, so kind of in that observation phase, right, of life, where you're just kind of learning, and I think that's awesome. Honestly, that's how we grow. I believe everyone is a leader, and I think actually some of the most impactful leaders that I know in my life never had a title, right? My mom was an incredible leader. My parents were huge examples for me, and I'll go into that a little bit more in a moment. But a lot of times, if you're a part of a family, right? Do you have siblings who look up to you, right? Are you maybe a parent? You're a leader there, right? Are you part of any organizations, right? How do you influence people in your organizations? Might be a church organization, might be something like CASA, right? A non-for-profit. And so there's so many different areas that we get to influence in our life. And if you're influencing any other human, you're a leader, right? You have a responsibility to help lead them and help them be better, right? To light that fire or to help their fire keep going, right? So the reason I'm here is because I want to help light your guys' fires or keep them going brighter. And just a bit about my story. A lot of you guys know a little bit pieces, and so I just want to make sure that I kind of we get to all be on the same page there for a moment. But I was born in Newberg, Oregon, on the way out to the coast, a little bit south of Portland. And my parents, who I touched on a moment ago, are the hardest working folks I know. I learned what it meant to work and to put in our hard, honest day's work through my parents. We did not have a whole lot. My mom told me a story recently that I didn't even know, I didn't remember. You kind of grow up, and I don't know if any of you kind of grown up in maybe some, I'd say a lower socioeconomic bracket. That's a nice way of saying you grew up poor. So we grew up poor, but I didn't really ever know it, right? And she told me, she said, hey, you remember how we always used to collect pop cans and we always made that a really big deal? She's like, that's so that we could buy milk, right? So she sheltered us from a lot of that, but they worked their tails off. My dad was in general contracting. My mom did administrative work. I remember one time, because I always wanted to help dad, right? Like that was such the big deal. So I think I was probably Elliot's age, my youngest son, maybe 10 or 11. And so I'm out there and I'm helping him. He's got this big roofing project, right? And he doesn't have a whole lot of money, right? As we just talked about. And so he's like, hey, every time you find a nail that I've dropped from the roof, I'm gonna give you a penny, right? So I'm all about that, right? I'm like, oh, here we go. I'm gonna make tons of money. So I'm going through doing all these different things and I'm putting it in my bucket, and I had like the best moment ever because he accidentally dropped a bag of nails and he didn't know it, right? So I took the bag of nails and I put it into the bucket and I dropped it in there. I'm like, hey Dad, check it out. And the look on his face, he was just like, oh crap, like this is a lot more than what I thought it was gonna be. And so I, of course, fessed up and told him, right? But it was just things like that where he instilled in me the work ethic that, the whole measure twice and cut once, right, is kind of the creed for a carpenter. But, you do the work that no one else is going to see, right? You build something for your own pride and for the pride of your family, and that is going to be its own reward. And by the way, you're going to get paid for it too, right? And so to me, that just really hit home. And honestly, I feel like it's fueled me ever since I've, been about Elliot's age, just growing up. So grew up in Newberg, Oregon, and had an amazing time there. And then I moved down to Eugene, met my beautiful wife, Kelly, down there when we were going to school. And we've been together almost 20 years. It just seems crazy, right? Coming up here in March. We met, the day that I graduated was the same day that Oliver was born, my oldest, so who's now 17, and he's taller than me, which I really don't like, because he's giant now. I think he's 6'2". Both of my older sons are taller than me now. And so, for me, one of the big pieces was, gosh, I need to help provide for my family. So how do I do that? And we knew that Eugene was a great college town. I got to graduate from college there. But I knew that wasn't going to be the best place for us long term. So we moved to Boise, Idaho, and got to follow my wife's family out there, and who were huge supports as well. And I started selling Yellow Book advertising. Do you guys remember what phone books were? Anybody know who that is? I think my boys may have used them as like a booster, like to help prop them up, right? Like to sit a little bit taller. Outside of that, they're almost extinct. So I did that back in 2004, and I made bank. Like I made really, really good money. I'm in my early 20s, and I'm just like, man, I'm pretty hot stuff. Like I'm kind of awesome, right? And I did that for about a year and a half. Made close to 6 figures, right? And so I'm like, you know what I should do? I should go commission-only insurance, supplemental insurance salesman. Like just go out, no safety net. I don't need these guys, right? I'm making all this bank. Yeah, sure knows where this is going. It didn't go well. It didn't go real well, actually. About 3 months in, it was like, oh wow, I don't have a safety net. I don't have a network. I don't know what I'm doing, right? And so we were broke. I mean, I remember us. I was doing odd jobs. I was giving plasma. I was doing everything I could just to keep food on the table. And so I did that for a few months and tried a couple different things. Stocked shelves at Hastings. I don't know if the Hastings is still around, if that's a thing. You're shaking your head no, Heather. Okay, it's not a thing. Okay. I'll say there certain things that are like, yeah, that went out of business. So, just anything I could do to provide for my family, working nights to help do cleaning, do janitorial. And so it was from that really humble place that I decided, you know what, I don't actually know what I'm doing, and I might need to learn. And so I walked into a Starbucks and I said, hey, I'm really overqualified. I have my degree, and would you just hire me as a barista? Like, could you just give me a job, basically? I'll never forget Rick Cartwright, who was the shift supervisor at the time. This is in Meridian, Idaho. He said, I think we could make you like one level up here. He's like, but I want to teach you what it's going to take to be successful. He's like, I see something in you, and I would really like to kind of take you under my wing. Would you be willing to do that? was like, yeah, I want free coffee and a paycheck. Like that's like a bonus, right? Like this is great. And so I got to learn from Rick, who mentored me and just poured into me, just loved on me. He knew where I was at. He knew I had small kids and was struggling to make a mortgage payment. So fast forward 3.5 years with Starbucks, I went from barista to branch manager, store manager, and helped open a couple different stores. He taught me everything he knew. And he taught me how to lead with heart. So he's one of those pivotal, you guys always have rocks, right, in your lives, like these rocks, these people that you remember, and you're just like, man, that's somebody that I'm never going to forget. And so that was Rick for me. And so I did that for 3.5 years, and I said, gosh, this is really fun, but I have this finance degree, and it'd be really fun to be able to use that. I wonder how I could use that. And at that time, this was right before 2008, is when I kind of looked to transition. And so I was like, I'm a member at Idaho Central. Maybe I could get a job there. Maybe I could do something there. And so I went through that process, and they selected me as a branch manager down in Meridian, Idaho. And it was probably 2 or 3 months later that the crash happened, the 2008 crash, right? I was like, I just moved into a finance position during the crash. Like, this is not a great move for me, right? It still ended up being one of the best moves of my life. And that's because Kent Oram, our CEO, is just an incredible leader. And he said, I'm betting on the people of Idaho. I'm betting that Idaho will bounce back faster than the entire nation. And I'm betting on the fact that the people of Idaho will be true to their word as much as they can be. That they're not going to default unless they actually have to. And so we're actually going to grow. We're going to expand our market. We're going to lend to people when nobody else will. And that said a lot to me, right? And he was right. He was really smart. He still is really smart. And so we grew, and I got to be a part of that. And I really it's a huge, huge privilege. So that's where I grew up, and I got to grow at the Mountain View branch specifically, which is in Meridian, Idaho. And then I moved to Eastern Idaho, which is where our regional office is, our headquarters there. And I got to become a regional vice president. I got to help oversee our branches and help oversee our contact center. And with that move, I knew, hey, I had success where I was at in the branch. But when I moved over, I made another, I call it one of those pivotal moments where I was like, okay, again, the hot stuff thing, right? Like, I'm hot stuff over here. I'm doing really good. Moved my family over to Pocatello. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to whip these guys into shape. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go look at these numbers, and we're just going to knock it out. And that really didn't go really well again. I fell pretty flat in the first 6 months because I didn't put my people first at all. I was looking at the numbers and what I could do and how I could kind of manipulate them a little bit, right? Get them where I want them type of thing. And I really crashed and burned. I kind of hit this crisis moment where I'm like, look, I knew how to do this before. Why is it different now, right? And it was different pressures. It was a different market. It was kind of a different beast. And so what I realized was that my leadership was really situational, right? I could be a really good leader if I kind of knew what I was doing and if I was kind of comfortable. But if I wasn't, right, then I kind of reverted back to this old man, I'll say, right? This guy who thinks he's all that. His pride. I mean, I'll just call it what it is. And so then I got to learn, and really most of these principles that I'm going to share with you guys here tonight are born from that moment where I said, man, I don't know what I'm doing. I need a lot of help. And I don't know about you guys, but I need divine intervention. I need God to help me through these processes. I need him really every day, but I need inspiration from him to help lead in a powerful way. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. But I was in Pocatello for 5 years, and then we got to move up to North Idaho and got to be up here. We've been up here almost 5 years now, I think, and we love it. It's amazing. How can you not living up here, right? I know some of you guys are more recent transplants. Some of you guys have been here for a long time, but we just feel blessed to be here, especially with all of you. So it's a very condensed version of my story. But I wanted to highlight a couple of those big pieces because, again, I think that's really what's helped shape me and help me be the way I am today. So Format, I want to talk about that for a second. So some of you guys already have questions, which I'm super excited about. 2 people did give me questions ahead of time. My son Henry gave me a hard time. He's like, are you pre-screening? Like, you just like knowing what the questions are before they're even sent? I said, no, I'm not doing that. But I did have a couple of people send me their questions. And so what I'd like to do is go through 7 principles that I think are really powerful that will help, again, either reignite that fire if it's out. It'll help throw some logs on the fire if it's kind of going okay. And if you're fully roaring and you're like, I know I'm fully roaring, but I'm going to need even more fuel to keep this going for 2022, then that's what this is going to be for you, right? So no matter where you're at, this is going to be helpful. The first principle is living in reality. So how to make your actions align with what you say you believe. So I kind of like math, I'm a finance guy. So I'm going to give you guys an equation that was given to me way back in the day and really helps in honestly every single area of life. And I think helps not only as you're leading teams, but as you're leading yourself and trying to lead with heart, right? So here's the equation. So it's stated belief. I wish I had a whiteboard. Well, I do have a whiteboard over there, but I don't want to mess up Casa's whiteboard. So stated belief plus actual practice equals actual belief, okay? So stated belief plus actual practice equals actual belief. So I'll give you an example. So I would tell you, especially earlier on, hey, what are the most important things in my life, right? God, family, work, right? Like I'd go down that list and I'd say, these are the most important things to me, right? And then when you looked at my life and what I spent the most time doing and what I spent the most time focused on, right? And where my heart was actually turned towards. The truth was finding approval through work was my actual thing that I believed in the most, right? And that's hard to say, but it's true. That's what it was. So when you go through those things, looking at that through the prism of what's my actual practice? What do I spend the most time doing? What does my heart turn towards the most, right? And what does life actually look like? Because I can say I believe anything I want, right? I can stand up here and say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I believe. And I think a lot of us do that, right? But as leaders, as you guys know, the proof's in the pudding, right? If somebody says, hey, I believe in us being on time, right? That's really important to our organization, and the leader comes in late, you're like, oh boy, here we go, right? It just doesn't look good. It's that you're not actually following your belief. And so you can use that, and I've used that many times when I'm just like, gosh, I feel like I'm struggling with what I say I want to kind of accomplish. What does that actually look like for me? And I've actually been able to use that with a couple of different people as well. It's just been really impactful for me. The other piece is, realizing that we have so much inside of us. We have that fire, right? And we'll talk about purpose here in a moment. But when we have that fire operating in us, and we know what we're meant to do and what we're put on this earth to do, then we have this mindset, and many of us have it when we're really young, of I can do anything, right? I can grab the world by the tail, and I know there's an element of pride with that, but there's also this idea of I can do anything I put my mind to, right? I can accomplish anything that I want to accomplish. And when that starts to tip, and typically it's when you start getting my age and a little bit older, when you start tipping is like, I don't know if I can do that. That seems kind of scary. I'm kind of old. That might hurt. Those types of things, right? That's our tipping point. When we start saying, when our can'ts and I can't do this thing starts becoming more of our vernacular than the I cans, that's the tipping point, and that's the danger zone is what I'll call it, right? Is when we know what we're put here on this earth to do, and when we say, hey, this is what I believe, and here's my actions behind that, I'm not saying go like, crazy, skiing or I don't know, whatever you're going to do. No crazy stunts. It doesn't have to be any of that. It can just be, I believe that there's way more in front of me than there is behind me. And that's a really easy thing to say when you're younger, but as you, again, get into your 40s and later, that's a lot harder to live, right? That's a lot harder to do. And so I think, recognizing that there is that tipping point and living in that reality, I think makes a huge difference. So that's principle number one is living in reality. I'm going to go ahead and pause for a second, and just kind of open it up to any questions that you guys have. Could be about that principle, could be just about anything in general about leadership. I know a couple of you guys came prepared, so I'll just open it up to y'all.
Could you repeat the way that you said that? There's like a subtitle for your point, living in reality.
Oh yeah, how to make your actions align with what you say you believe. And I shared a little bit of my story. I could share a lot. Kelly could share a lot of examples of times that I've said something, right? I promised to do something, and then my actions say something totally different, right? So again, as leaders, as influencers, as people who are trying to make an impact, which I know each and every one of you are, right? I know each and every one of you in this room. That's a big deal to you. You want to make an impact. So that one to me is like the core. Because sometimes we can be kind of out of reality. We can be up in our own mind and say, oh, well, this is how everything is. But once you start asking those questions of yourself and others, it makes a big difference. So thanks for asking that, Carly. What else?
It's a little bit of a segue, but
Yeah.
what is Rick doing now?
What is Rick doing now? He has his own t-shirt printing business down in Meridian. So he stayed on with Starbucks for a time, and then he opened his own company and just decided, hey, I'm gonna do screen printing and a lot of other things down there in Meridian. I actually ran into him, funny enough, at Idaho Central because he was a member, so I got to see him all the time. I'm like, Rick, what are you doing now? And so it was really fun to see him succeed. Yeah, thanks for asking that. Awesome.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for reconciling? So, okay, you ask these questions, you have this kind of heart-to-heart with yourself, or somebody else brings it up, and you say, oh, this is what I thought it was versus this is what it is. Do you have tips for like reconciling that? Because there's probably like an emotional component. It's that process management of like, ooh, what's going, what's not right?
Yeah.
How do you fix it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Carly. So Carly's question, I want to make sure everybody can hear questions too, and Henry, you can kind of help out with that. But Carly's question was, how do you kind of go through that process of reconciliation, right? And I can only speak from my own experience, so hopefully that's helpful. Again, I rely a ton on God, and I have to say, well, here's the reality, and I call it the fruit, right? Here's the fruit of my life and what's actually happening. So I kind of need you to help me change this. I kind of need to see something different. But practically speaking too, I love writing as much as I can. And I think a lot of times we get so busy that we don't spend enough time just writing things out. I've started a new practice just the past couple of days and this sounds easy, but it's actually really not, of just journaling 3 pages every single morning and just writing whatever comes, right? And that, were you saying something, Kristen? It's a lot. It's a lot. I know. I was like, how in the world am I going to do this? And
How big's the notebook? Like, is it small?
it's smaller than that. It's smaller than that. Yeah. Start with 1 page. I don't know. Do whatever you want. But for me, it was like, I want to make sure that I'm able to express and get out what I need to get out. And for me, that's been really helpful in something like this to say, well, I can say what I believe, but how do my actions align with that? And if they don't, then I need to either start saying something different, right? Because maybe I'm saying something that I shouldn't say, right? Oh, I can't do all these things, right? It might be a negative attribute, but it might be something really positive, right? Hey, my family is the most important. And there was a season where I was so devoted to work that I was just like going to every event. I was going to everything. I want to prove myself. I want to make sure that everybody knows that I can be there and help them, right? But I would have told you during that same time frame that my family was the most important thing to me. It was complete BS. I'll say it a nice way. It wasn't true. It just wasn't true. So I had to say, okay, well, either I need to stop saying that my family actually isn't the most important thing to me, or I need to start changing that. And I need to see what are my barriers. So I love writing out, what's my barrier in this area? What's stopping me up? Is it internal or is it external? What's making this not happen? And just kind of honestly journaling around that a little bit and seeing what comes up. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's what works for me. Yeah. What else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How did you come up with metrics to measure how you were spending your time? Was it solely on the amount of time that you were spending, or the quality of time that you were spending in that area?
Yes. Yeah, that's a great question, Josh. So Josh's question was, how did you come up with metrics with how you were kind of quantifying your time spent, but then also the quality of your time, right? So I think, and I don't have it with me, thank goodness, my wife is holding onto it for me right now, but it's my phone, which is the worst and best device ever created, right? I don't know about you guys, but I'm always like super sad when I drive by and I see the couple and they're at the restaurant. They're both like, doing this on date night, right? I know, I've never done that. Like that, but we're so addicted to those things, right? And so for me, it's saying, gosh, what am I bringing during my time with someone else? Am I distracted, right? And am I bringing my best self? And I'll go back to that fire piece of, Josh, if I'm with you, I want to make sure that my time with you is impactful. And that could be 30 seconds, right? It could be 3 hours. I don't know what that time can look like. There's always constraints, right, on time. But for me, I think the big piece is, how can I give the best of myself in that moment? And if I can't give the best of myself, to be honest with that other person and either say, hey, this isn't the best time, right, to do that, or make sure that I'm removing that distraction, right? So I use the phone as an analogy, but to quantify that, I do have specific metrics and goals on what I want to do. I have a goal with my wife of every single Wednesday night, we do date night. And I'm pretty good, I'm getting the nod of approval, pretty good at it. I'm not 100%. And sometimes I try to schedule stuff on top of it, even though it's in my calendar, right? So that's that moment of truth where I'm like, ooh, hey, wait a second, I said this was important, right? So am I honoring that? And then again, I love to journal. I don't know if any of you guys have this. I know Heather has it because I gave it to her for Christmas. But it's a high performance planner from, I think it's Brendan Butcher. Is that his name? Butcher? I love this thing. It's amazing. It's so good.
Brendan
Burchard, thank you. Yeah. Do you have this? Rose, you're smiling over here.
Oh, we were just commenting how prepared she was.
I know. She's like, I have it. I'm like, yes, I didn't prep that. She didn't even know. Good job. Yeah. Here's what I love about it. I get to write on the left-hand column the things that are important to me, right? What are my intentions for today? Who am I gonna make feel special today? Is there somebody who needs like a note or a card or something, right? What's my biggest struggle gonna be? What's my biggest hang up gonna be, right? So I love that on the left side up above. There's some really great questions, and it's got the calendar in the middle. The power, though, is on the right-hand side. And the right-hand side is at night when I go through and I say, well, how did I actually do, right? I can set goals and intentions all day long. New Year's resolutions every single year, right? Goal vision sheets, the whole deal. The proof is in the accountability, right? The proof is, what did I do tonight? Or what did I do today that I can look through tonight? So it says on a measure of 1 to 5, what was my clarity, right? Well, how understanding was I today? Was I able to actually spend good time with Josh, or was I on my phone the whole time, right? Did I do the date night thing, or did I blow it off? That's where the power is at, right? For each and every one of us. So I love that book. Just so you know, I'm really upset with Amazon about it because you can only buy one 1 year pack, and then they're like that, and this is the only place you can buy it is Amazon. Nels, I would buy it locally if I could. I promise you that. I know, I see the button. Yes, I know, Nels is big local. I thought about it, I was like, there's no bookstore this is in, so.
Only in a state of emergency.
Yeah, exactly, thank you. It's yeah.
So what I hear you saying is there's a need someone needs to fill in the city.
Yes, I know, yes, seriously, yeah, so. Anyway, it's. I feel like I'm doing an infomercial for this stupid book, but it's literally anything. I mean, it can be your own journal. You don't have to buy the book. Anything that helps you set intentions in the morning and helps you go back at that same night and say, well, how did I do? What was my score, right? Just, I want to rate myself. That's the power, because it's accountability. And so to answer your question, Josh, it could look a lot of different ways, but I would say, what are the top 2 or 3 things that you want to make sure happen? Might be with Liv, right? You guys have a newborn coming on the way, right? Congratulations, yeah. What month? When is it coming, or when's your?
July 17th is
July.
our due date.
Your due date,
So,
yeah.
13-ish weeks.
Yeah. So it might be something around the baby, right? And spending time specifically with your wife and the baby as kind of that's coming, and maybe even to those next stages. But that's where I think the power is at, for sure. So. Does that help answer your question? Yeah. Awesome. Aaron?
When you reflect on your journal or the list of goals in that night, and you're like, I didn't hit any of them, how do you stay positive? How do you reflect? Because you're going to go through some emotion, but you don't want to stay on that emotion too long. So how do you bounce back, or how do you adjust so you make the next date night, or
Yeah.
that meaningful 5-minute conversation with your friend that you only see once a week, or things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just to summarize Aaron's question, he was talking about, well, what happens when you don't hit the metrics, which happens too, right? I mean, I don't hit them all the time, obviously. And then what do you do from that? And how do you help it not be demotivating? We all get another day, right? Like the fact that I get another day to breathe on this planet is like the best gift ever. So that's how I wake up every morning, is like, man, I'm so glad that I get to be here. And then I love going back through and looking at the positive. I can look at the negative for sure, right? But even just tracking something and focusing on, hey, I know in my past there were times when we never did a date night. That wasn't a big deal, right? I know there's plenty of times when I manage where it was like, I'm not going to do a one-on-one. Like, I'm too busy. I got other things to do, right? There's plenty of times in my life that I haven't done those things. So the perspective I love to have, Aaron, is like, what have I done that's good? And how can I just build on top of that? And if I didn't do it today, I didn't do it today. But I know that I have tomorrow. And there's a weekly check-in that I do with myself as well to say, well, let's just kind of see how the week is. Because you're going to have, Carly, you've got, a sick hubby at home, right? Like not every single thing might happen this week, right? Like he doesn't feel good. When you have somebody who's not feeling well at home, like that chaos can happen, right? Like the schedule is going to go off. If you have, any schedule changes, right? Like that's going to happen. You have people coming and visiting. So for me, I really love to focus on the positive and say, I know where I'm going. And just because I might take a step or two back doesn't mean I'm a failure. I'm going to end the night in gratitude. So that's one of the big pieces that I love to do, is express gratitude internally for the things that have happened to me today that I had no control over, that were just good. It's like, man, that's so cool that happened today, right? And then I also love to celebrate, hey, here's the good things that happened. Here's where I can build from for tomorrow or for next week. So, does that help?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome.
I have one, if you still have.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Maybe it's kind of two-part, but how critical do you think it is that a person identifies themselves as a leader? Because sometimes I think whether it's a lack of self-confidence or maybe just, wanting to maintain a position of humility and all of those things, like how critical to your leadership is it for you to say, no, I am a leader?
Mm-hmm.
And the second part to that would be, once you claim it, own it, whatever that looks like, then how do you manage the moments where you feel like, wait a minute, I'm the leader in this position and I really didn't handle that moment well. Like how do you go?
I've got a bunch of those. I can give you examples. Yes, yeah. Great questions, Rose. That's awesome. It actually ties into the next principle. So do you mind if I kind of jump into that for a second and then answer the second part of that? Because I think they tie in together. So the second principle is who are you? Who you are. And the tagline I put on there is, it's not the answer you think. But it's really, the question is who you are and why are you here? I don't know a better, more powerful question. I just don't. So I'll help give you my definition, right? I'm a child of God who's here to empower, love, and encourage leaders and my family. That's it. That's what I'm put here on this earth to do. All the rest of it is titles and extra things, right? But I know to my core that's who I am, right? And it took me a long time to figure that out. A really long time, probably longer than it should. But that's why I'm here. And each one of you has your own fire and your own reason for being here on this planet, right? And so that's the question you get to answer. Bless you. And it might look different in different seasons for you, right? But I think, Rose, again, kind of jumping back to what we started with, everyone's a leader. Not everybody knows it yet, right? And not everybody's ready to step into that yet either, right? Again, I know a lot of people. My mom would never say she's a leader. She never, influenced anyone. Well, she raised me and my two younger brothers to be incredible young men, right? To be good husbands and just make an impact in this world. I think most moms are that way, honestly. Many parents are that way, and they don't even recognize the amount of leadership and influence they really have, right? And you see the lack of it too, right? you folks with Casa see that too, right? When there's a lack of leadership in the home, there's lack of positive influence, how damaging that can be, right? So to answer your question, I still think people can be influential and they can still be leaders. They just may not know it and not be able to walk in their full power with it, right? We all have like power meters of what we're able to do. I don't know if we call it tiger's blood. Like you're like it's a Friday, you're like ready to go. Maybe you've had too much coffee and you're just like, I'm ready to tackle the world. Let's do this today, right? You have those types of days, and then there's other days where you aren't feeling it. You're just kind of like, well, I'd call in today if I could, but I know I shouldn't, like this is going to be kind of hard to muscle through this day today, right? So there's all these different levels that you have, but as a leader, I think it's our goal and our responsibility to say, man, this is what I'm called to, this is what I'm stepping into, and this is the positive influence I get to have. So the second part, though, I want to make sure I understand the second part of your question is when situations come up, or redefine that for me, the second part of your question.
I think where I was going was just like, for some people, they really are functioning in this leadership capacity, or maybe they don't want to claim it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they're hesitant to claim it, then should they do that?
Mm-hmm.
And once they have done that, then it feels like maybe that's when the pushback will come their way. Or then once you've claimed the fact that, hey, I am a leader, now when you make mistakes or you stumble or then all of a sudden there's accountability and you have to correct things as you go. And so what kind of, advice would you give for the person that's learning how to navigate through the stumbling blocks along the way?
Yeah, fully embrace it. Like head on, know that you're going to make a bunch of mistakes. And I joke that I've made a bunch. I talked about a couple different ones with you, right? Leaving a really good job, even though obviously there wasn't a future in Yellow Page sales, obviously. I was like, what's a smartphone thing? That seems like this could be a disruptor for my business here. So there's those types of things where, you have to be able to say, okay, I made this mistake when I moved to Pocatello and I just started managing all by numbers. I literally had to go back and apologize to each person. And I was just honest with them. Look, I was trying to manage you this way because I thought I could get this from you. I was transactional, right? We'll get to this here later on. But I was transactional instead of relational, right? You give me this, I'll give you this, right? I'll give you the raise, you give me your performance, and then we're good, right? That's what I need.
That's key. Leaders do not manage.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. And I think the second part is, there's so much power in admitting our mistakes. And as a culture and as a society, it's seen as like weakness or, I don't know how many of you guys know. I mean, I know a lot of great leaders and I know a lot of really not great leaders. And one of the big defining pieces for me is when they're not able to say, you know what, I really screwed up. I screwed up just recently. I'll share a screw up with you. I screwed up just recently. I went down to our Moscow location and I had, I love coming in and talking to teams and talking, at huddles and just sharing different things. Sometimes things like this and other things that are just inspirational, right? And I did the most worst thing that you can do, which was the compliment sandwich, right? And I was so into what I was talking about that I didn't realize kind of what I said in the moment. But basically I was like, man, you guys are great, you guys are great, you guys are great. And instead of saying hey, you guys are really struggling in this area, I said, well, you guys are basically the worst at this. And then I just jumped on and I'm like, and you're great at this, and you're great at this, and you're great at this. And I could see their faces change. And I'm like, I wonder what I said. I wonder why they're not super into this anymore, right? And then 20 minutes later, one of them was like, so you did this. And I was like, oh my gosh. I totally did that. I totally dropped the compliment sandwich on you guys and made you feel really bad about yourselves, right? I'm so sorry. That's not what I meant to do, but I did it, And there were some folks that I couldn't even get a hold of, they had already left. And so I video called them the next day and just said, hey, can we talk? I did this and I'm really sorry, right? And I'm not sharing that story to puff myself up at all. I'm just saying literally us being leaders and just saying, look, I screwed up and I need your forgiveness and I'm trying to be a better leader. That to me speaks credibility and speaks leadership more than anything else. right? Because I want a leader who I know isn't perfect. And when they start pretending that they're perfect, that's when I know that there's some big issues going on. And honestly, typically, anytime you see anything big in the news with leaders who end up failing, that's exactly what happens, right? Their poop doesn't stink. They're just incredible, right? Like, nothing's wrong with them. And then the big crash happens, right? Because they're not real anymore. So to me, I think like honesty and being radically accountable to yourself and to your teams, I mean, that's what makes the biggest difference. So yeah, I'd say for any new leader, so powerful to do that. So does that help answer your question? Yeah, cool. Awesome. Any other questions tied into what Rose mentioned or anything else? I can keep going. I want to touch on the second part, actually, of the second principle of who you really are. Your closest relationships define you, and I touched on fruit. So when we're in the working world, it's really easy and attractive, and I would say even a little bit seductive, to find our purpose and meaning in work. But the relationships that actually matter the most are our family, right? Those who are closest to us, those who know us best. And what do those relationships look like? Because I can look great on the outside to anybody I want, right? I can, again, kind of put on this persona. But my wife knows me. I mean, we've been married 20 years. She knows the good, the bad, and the ugly. So my relationship with her is actually what matters the most. And she's the one who can actually see through all the other stuff that somebody at work who I can impress and, make a big deal over or fuss over or whatever, right? They don't know me, right? You guys all know me to a measure, right? But you don't know me like my wife does or my boys do. And they get to see parts of me that aren't as fun. They get to see early morning Michael. They get to see late night grumpy Michael, right? 9:30, I'm already in bed Michael. Like, don't come into my room anymore type of thing, right? That's the person they get to see, and that's the real me, right? This person even tonight that you see, I'm trying to be as authentic and real as I can be. These guys know who I am, right? And they love me anyway. It's crazy. So that's, I think, analyzing that fruit. How are my relationships with those I'm closest with, and what can I do to make an impact? And what's crazy about that, and I know many of you have amazing relationships with your families, as that grows and gets stronger, guess what happens? Work is actually way, way better, right? Any other relationship becomes an incredibly, just grows, right? And you're actually able to be more relational with people instead of that transactional like we were talking about before. I think being transactional with people is just a coping mechanism. It's easy, right? Heather, you're nodding your head. Yeah, it is. It's just easy. It's like, okay, well, I don't have to invest in you, and you don't have to invest in me, and we'll just kind of keep the surface level, and then we can kind of move on from there. So I got heavy for a second. Any other questions on that before we kind of keep rolling? I do know there was one question submitted from Melissa, who's down in Moscow. And I actually think it ties into your question, Rose, a little bit, but I think this is a good spot to stop. So I'm going to just ask her question and then answer it real quick. So she said, I know someone who is in a new leadership position. I'm sorry, she phrased it differently. This is just kind of like a scenario. You know someone who is in a new leadership position. You suspect it's their first time in a leadership role of this magnitude, and they're still trying to figure out who they are. Some behaviors that raise concern about their leadership capabilities have been brought up. Any advice on how to support the new leader in a kind and respectful way? So this is that one that I said I got prepped on, so I thought about it a little bit. This is a difficult one. I don't know if any of you have been in a similar situation, right? Especially, I don't know, obviously, the whole pieces here, but behaviors that raise concern. I always kind of say, gosh, there's issues that may pop up because somebody's newer and they don't quite know what they're doing, or they make a mistake and they do something. That's different than, hey, there's maybe some core value issues going on here, right? You're kind of like, oh boy, are they really operating in honesty and integrity in what they do, right? I'm sure we've all worked with people who are that way, whether they're above our position or same position or below, right? So supporting a new leader in a kind and respectful way. If it's somebody that I want to be on board with, then I just tell them that, hey, I'm here to support you. and I'm on your team, and I want to be able to be honest with you. Is this the type of relationship you're looking for? I know it sounds kind of weird to say out loud, right? But just being honest with them, because if they're a newer leader, whether it's just brand new to the organization or they're new to leadership, they're probably they understand that they're doing the doggy paddle, right? They know that there's probably some things going on if they're a little bit self-aware. And maybe they aren't, but you can basically say, hey, I'm going to come in and I want to be on your team, right? I want to help support you. And so if I see something that I can help kind of call out, I want to do that. And if they're not open to that, I've just kept my mouth shut. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do, right? People only can go where they want to go, right? It's kind of like, have you ever dragged a horse before or tried to? Have you ever seen that? Or maybe even seen it, right? Where they like lock their legs in, right? And they're like, I'm not going anywhere. You're trying to kind of pull on them. Like that's how all of us are, right? We're just like the kid who's throwing the tantrum in the mall, who's just like, I'm not moving, mommy, right? Like I'm stuck here. Like you can't move me, you can't make me, right? If somebody's in that place, if I'm in that place, like it's not gonna happen, right? So I would just say through relationship, and so Melissa, I know you're on watching, I would say through relationship and really trying to look out for them and trying to deliver your best for them, right, is really the only way that I could say that you could help maybe support them if they're open to it, right? So, all right, so I want to make sure I answered that question. Any other questions before we jump into the next principle? Christian?
So if you're an introvert by nature, do you have any exercises, anything like that to make conversations less awkward?
Start dancing in front of them.
Yeah! I saw your dance moves, Christian, so
Carl did really well.
check, step one, done, yeah. I probably feel, well, number one, you and I are different, right? And I know how much you care, though. Like, I know how much, so sometimes there's this bad rap that introverts get of like, oh, they don't care, like they don't, whatever. I don't think that's true at all. I think, I'm up here, right? I'm more of an extrovert. I don't think introverts need to try to be something that they're not. And that's a lot of what the world tells people. Now, there's certain things you have to do, right? I know you're a realtor, a very successful realtor, right? And yeah, well, that's what your clients say. So I know you put a lot of heart and passion into what you do, right? And you're really good one-on-one. What I've found is that introverts are really, really great one-on-one, right? Whether that be face-to-face, whether that be through messages, whatever it is, they're really intent. Because for me as an extrovert, I'm kind of scanning the room. I'm like, okay, is everybody cool? Kyle's good. All right, good. Like I'm trying to kind of go through and just make sure everybody's set, right? And as an introvert, you're just kind of like, I'm going to zero in on this one person and make sure that I'm like serving them to this super high level, right? That's just been my understanding and my, so personally, I don't think that extroverts need to typically change a whole lot. Are there things you could practice? For sure. I think sometimes stretching yourself in different ways, if let's say an introvert isn't comfortable with doing something that I'm doing right now, right? If they're just like, nope, not going to do it, not me. Maybe recording yourself, right? If there's a format there to do that. And that in itself can be scary, right? To kind of record yourself and the cool part about recording yourself is that you can delete it, right? Unless it's a Facebook Live or something.
I was going to say, now if you put it out there on YouTube.
Yeah, once it's posted, that's a different story, right? I think there's a lot of power in just recording yourself in general, right? It's a different type of self-reflection. Again, we're talking about journaling. It'd just be really, it's interesting. People think I'm weird sometimes. Like, why would you record yourself? Well, I do things like this, but I think it's really interesting to see how you see yourself from a different perspective, right? And sometimes people say things like, oh my gosh, I saw this picture of me and I hated it, blah, 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 right? Or I saw this video of myself, whatever. And it's like, oh, well, maybe there's pieces there you could change if you wanted to. Or there's just other pieces where you're just like, hey, I'm actually comfortable watching myself, right? And seeing what other people see and experience. Because obviously a lot of people like what they experience, Christian, right? I know Heather does, right? She's sticking around with you, right? So, I think there's just a lot of power in being comfortable in your own skin. And then looking for ways to connect that might look a little bit different. I don't know about you guys, but when I get a handwritten note in the mail. I got one from KJ just the other day. Thank you, KJ. It's amazing. You what?
I feel they're super important.
They're super important. Why are they so important? Why do you think they're so important?
I know a lot of people disagree with me but I've always felt like it takes that extra effort. I mean, it really does take, and it's not a form, like you know it was duplicated 100 times. It's just personal touch.
Yeah.
And you have to write the person's name.
Mm-hmm.
That name recognition.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good. So Christian, I would just say, there's lots of different ways to connect with people, and sometimes we get hung up on, here's the more showy things, or here's the things that I struggle with, so those are the things I just need to spend a bunch of time doing, right? We'll talk about strengths here in a minute, but your strengths and your superhero abilities might be more in different areas, and just honing like crazy on that, right? Messaging people and crafting really strong messages to them through email and text, and which I know you do, and note cards, and maybe even a little video message, or maybe an audio message, right? Something that way. I would just say be comfortable with you being you, and don't have to maybe focus on some of those things. If you want to practice things, for sure, practice makes perfect. I always say for any presentation, anything you do, practice it 7 times. I know it sounds like a lot, right? That's like our 3 pages of journaling a little while ago. But the more you practice, the more comfortable you get, right? So, does that help? Yeah, awesome. Cool. All right, let's jump on to number 3. So, how to serve others. Serving with healthy boundaries first allows you to achieve results. So, I know, again, most of you in this room, and I know what's very typical for me when we're serving people is that we give and we give and we give and we give, and we give and we give and we give and we give, and then we give and we give and we give and we give, right? And then we get really tired. And then sometimes the people or the things that we're serving, we kind of get burnt out over. We're kind of like, so why am I doing this? Or you start to get irritated, right? It's like, oh my gosh, if I get one more question, if I get one more email, right? You get overwhelmed. You get like, not overflowing in a good way, in a bad way, right? You get overwhelmed, I should say. So you can serve from a place of overflow and increase. It's completely possible. And I think all of us can do it when we're actually serving ourselves first. And that sounds really selfish, and I'll get to what I mean on that in a second. But not coming from a place of lack, because it doesn't serve you or anyone else when you're serving from a place of lack or deficit, right? When you don't have the energy, when you don't have the space to do what you really want to do and need to do. You think, I'm sacrificing more, I'm trying to serve more, and it just ends up burning you out, and ends up a lot of times burning out relationships. Honestly, most job changes, relationship changes, all those things typically stem from burnout, right? People trying to do too much and give too much. Not always, but a lot of times that's the case. So how can we do something different? Well, I would contend with you to ask the question of what fills my cup, right? Like what makes me feel really, really good? And I'll just share a couple things for me personally, because again, this kind of a self-discovery process. I love spending time with the Lord. That's huge. I got to spend quiet time in the morning. I'm not right if I don't. I got to make sure that I'm outside at some point, at least a couple times a week. It could be hiking. It could be shoveling snow, which I did a lot of today. It could be something outside, but I just get grounded and reconnected when I'm in nature, right? That's really, really important to me. And I got to exercise. If I don't exercise and move my body somehow, dancing kind of counted, but not really a whole lot. It's mostly like running, cardio, just something to move my body and get me going at least 3 to 4 times a week. If I don't do that, I start getting weird. My wife uses like just go work out or something, right? I say I kind of get cabin fever, right? I just know I'm not myself. And so sometimes there's definitely seasons where that's not a possibility, at least for a shorter season. I have a really good friend currently who has his wife going through cancer and going through treatments. And this dude is still getting up, early morning, late at night and working out, because he knows that if he doesn't have the capacity, if he's not filling up his cup, he's not going to be able to be there for his wife as she's going through treatment. He gets it. Like, and he's living that. And I just totally am like blown away by it, because for me, it's really easy when I have spots of overwhelm that's situational for me to stop and to think that I'm helping by totally shutting off all the things that I know are going to fill my cup and just totally staying over here and just serving, right? Like we were talking about. And I get super overwhelmed, or I get resentful, right? Or I'm just like, oh, gosh, do I have to do this? How long do I have to do this for? It's a whole different paradigm there. So when we're talking about serving others, I think those two things are really, really helpful. And then with healthy boundaries, sometimes we hero, right? And we try to say, oh, I can do that. I can save you. I can help with that. And so there are times that obviously we can do that and it's the right answer. There's a lot of times when we could probably pull in somebody else too, who knows how to do it better, who maybe needs an opportunity to help serve, who could do it side by side with you, right? And this is a great example with my boys too, of my oldest is now plowing our driveway. Praise the Lord, like it's such a great blessing for him to be plowing the driveway, right? Dude's 17, he does it way better than I do. And it'd be really easy for me to be like, all right, going out there doing the man thing, plowing the driveway. Well, he gets to learn what it means to help us go up and down our driveway safely, right? He gets to learn what it looks like to be able to help keep us safe. And even does the neighbors, it's just really, really cool to see him serve and grow. So as leaders, that's our influence, that's our ability, is to be able to kind of stretch ourselves beyond ourselves and pull in other people. Hey, who can do this really good? Who could help me with that? Who would actually be better at that? Who could I help teach this, right? That's a great way to prevent burnout, right? And not trying to serve people too much. So I'm going to pause for questions. What questions do you guys have?
I was going to go back to your question you got from the lady there in Moscow.
Yeah.
How do you remove yourself from the situation? Meaning, you have this boss that you go into that you think or manager does a really poor job, and they have no choice but to deal with that person every day. As a business owner, sometimes there may be a client or somebody you don't like, you can just remove yourself from the situation, but not always. Sometimes that person becomes in a role and you're forced to deal with them. How do you do that? How do you effectively, kindly do that when you really just don't have nothing to do with that human being?
Sounds like there's some personal history there, Matt. I don't know. I could be wrong. Has anybody else experienced what Matt's describing?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Roy's got a hand up there. I see a couple of hands up. I might just ask you to pick your guys' brain. I think there's one of two options, right? You either say, I got to get out of this, right? There's plenty of other jobs, right? You're like, man, this is not for me. This is why, whatever. And I would argue that if you don't have that perspective really quickly, and you don't have the second part that I'm going to talk about, it's really easy to get disgruntled, right? Which a lot of people are, right? They don't enjoy their jobs. I think there's like 18% of people who are in the workforce today are engaged, right? And there's like a 58% degree of burnout right now, right? U.S. employees have said, yep, I'm burnt out. Yep, I hit my limit. So I would say leave if you don't feel like you can do this next part, which is, I'm going to love on this person no matter what. Even though this is the worst person I've ever had to deal with. Even though this person controls my paychecks. Even though this person is talking bad about me. And I've been in that experience before, right? And that's not an easy place to be. So I'm not trying to minimize that at all, right? I've had really great bosses and really awful bosses. And unless you're at that place where you're just like, man, my only goal today is just to love on him, and I know I'm probably going to get, not literally, maybe literally, spit at, like just like talk down to, right? Just beat down on like this, but I know that there's something deeper going on here. And the thing that helps me when I'm dealing with people like that, because in a lot of my roles I've dealt with, we call them escalations, right? Somebody who comes in who's really upset, right? They're mad about something. 9 times out of 10, they weren't heard or understood, right? Or a lot of times they've had some sort of big trauma going on, right? And so I don't know, but I always try to kind of look at the person and say, man, if you assume that somebody's either in trauma, have something big going on, or they've just gotten out of it, you're going to be right at least 50% of the time, right? Like, because people have a story. And so what's really easy is that when I'm getting the bad end of their story, when I'm the punching bag, it's really easy for me to lose perspective because I'm the one who's having to deal with their junk, right? So if you can't be in that place, right, as an employee and deal with that and have the right heart about it, get out as quickly as possible. Because what will happen is resentment will happen. It just has to, right? You keep getting beat on, you keep getting talked down to, or whatever the negative behavior is, it's not going to help.
I think it's appropriate to go around their back, meeting them, maybe this, like an employee, been there for 15 years, new manager just shows up, should that employee leave, or should they go around the person's back with the person they already have the relationship with?
Yeah, and I would say, I guess the third, portion would be trying to talk to that person too, right? I don't know. I mean, you could probably speak to maybe the example that you're talking about, or maybe some of you guys could, speak from example. Every culture is different for work, right? There's sometimes where it's like, hey, if you went up, to their boss and talked to them, that would be great and it would be received really well. A lot of times it's not, right? A lot of times it's seen as like you're this tattletale, right? So that's why I'm saying, hey, I'm going to win them over, even though I'm the guy who's been here 15 years and they're the newbie and they're making my life hell, right? My goal is just to win them over with love and influence. And if I can't do that, then, it probably doesn't go well. Now, if there's obviously like HR abuses and some bigger stuff going on, like of course, you'd want to get those guys involved. But yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, it's a hard situation, honestly. And I'm sure you guys could, you could talk to some others who have maybe better perspectives than I do or different perspectives, but that'd be my answer on that one.
Yeah, I want to say something about that. If the boss is the owner, that's a short leash, and I would probably leave if it's just not going to be.
Right.
But too often, owners will elevate and promote a really good person down on the line. But that may not be the best because you're putting them in as a manager by way of reward.
Right.
Okay. But now that guy's stressed because it's not a comfort level and it shows on the line.
Right.
So we can avoid that problem simply by putting the right person there. Not just by reward, but by talent and ability.
No, you're so right, Nels. Yeah. Yeah, and it does happen quite a bit as well. So that's good. Are there any, sorry. Did Courtney do it? Yeah, okay, yes.
So just going back to your kind of analogy about the punching bag, let's say the situation is, it blows up, you walk away from it, but now you have these massive walls up around you. When is it appropriate to either bring those down or say kind of re-feel the situation? Like, do you keep your boundaries, your walls up really, really high all the time, or do you slowly kind of let those down again? Does that make sense?
Yeah, gosh. I'll just tell you what works for me, right? Because I've gotten thrown a lot of crap on me, right? Whether it's from people through work or whether, in my work history or even from members, whatever. People can do things that are offensive, but it's actually my choice if I'm offended, right? People can do things that are offensive. I choose if I'm offended. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm just going to drop all the walls and, you said you were sorry, Courtney, for treating me really bad, so now we just get to be best friends and we're going to go to coffee all the time, right? Like, we're going to have boundaries, right? And you need to re-earn trust. That's really important, right? Not that you would ever be mean to me, but we're playing here for a second, right? I would go through that process, right? For your benefit, not for my benefit, right? Because most of the time people don't know how to act in the workplace, right? A lot of people don't know how to act in the workplace or with each other. And that's because maybe of how they were parented, maybe because of the things that they have going on. So I want to give them the opportunity to be able to reconcile a relationship and then to rebuild trust if that's what they want to do. But if they're going to stay way over there and then the thing happens and then it blows over and we just kind of move on and pretend it didn't happen, right? If that's where somebody's at, we're not going to be best friends, right? That's just not going to happen until they're ready, and then we can work through that process together, right? And at the same time, I get to choose, again, kind of going back to who I am. I know who I am, right? So do I want the approval of people? Do I want them to treat me good? For sure. That's really great. At the end of the day, if they don't, I still am who I am. And that's a really hard thing. That's a hard place to be, right? And when that happens, then what people do is more kind of through that prism of, man, they got deeper stuff going on. And I can try to have some understanding for it. Doesn't make it okay, right? Doesn't make it okay for them to do those things, but it's kind of a different way to look at it. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Do you have a question online there?
Yes, this question is from Kelly. In regards to pulling people in to help you, how is the best way to delegate when you aren't sure anyone can do the job as well as you can? In my own
Where did I go?
In my own experience, my name is on my work, so it needs to be done a certain way. How can I inspire the best work out of someone I delegate to?
Man, that's a really good question. I love it. You guys are asking really hard, good questions. This is great. It's good. Keep them coming. This is fun. So I want to answer that question, but I kind of want to tie it into this next principle. And I know we're getting closer on time, so if you guys do have a question, just make sure that you pop your hand up and we make it happen. I'm going to go through actually the next few principles for the sake of time and just touch on them. This is just to kind of give you a taste of kind of what my big focuses are, but I want to make sure that I honor our time, number one, because we're done at 8:30. And then number two, try to take as many questions as I can. So I'll touch on this one. Yeah, I'll touch on a couple, and then I'll answer Kelly's question. So number 4 is connecting at the heart level. So it's really empowering others through what we talked about earlier, which is that relational leadership. And so this quote to me is just like, it came to me fairly recently over the last year or two, but just like is so good. The quality of your questions determines the quality of your relationships.
Say that again, please.
The quality of your questions determines the quality of your relationships. Now you might be like, well, there's probably more to that. What I mean by that is that when you assume, right, and Kelly could be right on, right? Like, hey, these people, maybe they're not quite there, they need some help, whatever. I've found that when I assume certain things about people, I'm like 99.9% wrong. I don't know where their starting place is. I don't know actually where they're at. I don't know what they're capable of. I don't know what they're not capable of. The better the questions I have for them and about them, what do they want to do? How do they want to grow? What are they naturally good at? What are they actually really gifted at, right? Start asking those probing questions about them. Then my relationship with them, if it's a work relationship or even at home, right? The better the questions I ask, well, help me understand that a little bit better. When you said this, what did that mean, right? You can put that into any context. But most of the time, we are creatures of go, 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 go. This is my schedule. I have to keep moving, right? We're super fast paced. We make judgment calls in split seconds, especially as leaders. And we don't slow down enough to say, you know what, I'm just not gonna talk for a little while, and I'm just gonna ask you a bunch of questions. Is that cool if I just ask you a bunch of questions? You'll be like, for any of you, I know, you know some of you are nodding your heads. Anytime I do that, I'm always blown away, and I always know that there's different answers than what I thought I was gonna get. Every single time. So that's a really powerful way, because each and every one of us wants two things. When you boil it all down, like get down to the very like grassroots bottom level, everyone wants two things. They want to be known and they want to be understood, right? And this sounds like the same kind of thing, right? You want to be known and you want to be understood. What does known mean? Well, I want you to ask me questions so you get to know me, so you don't just assume things about me. I want you to know what I'm really good at and what I'm not really good at, right? I want you to get me. And understood means, hey, when I say something, right? When I express something, I want you to know what that actually means without kind of your filters. We all have filters, right? From how you grow up, kind of what region of the country you're in. I mean, there are all these different filters, right? We have a lot of friends from the South. I'm like, what do you guys eat? Like, I don't get this. Like, you know, they got some crazy stuff there. it's delicious, but it's just weird sometimes. So, so there's all these different things where how can I understand that person, right? And if we're known and understood, a lot of this stuff becomes obviously a lot easier, right? It's a lot more impactful for us. And so understanding those two things with those that we're working with, I think is really, really powerful. Number 5 is cast the vision. This kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Don't be informational, be inspirational. If you're a leader and you run a meeting, if you go over numbers and you go through the agenda and you talk about what happened last month and everybody's asleep, because that's what happens in a lot of meetings, then know that what you're doing is not impactful. If whatever your meeting is or whatever you're presenting, someone could read on a piece of paper, then just save yourself a lot of time and send them an email or send them a piece of paper, right? Meetings and interactions with other humans are supposed to be inspirational. Now, you can talk about numbers for sure, right? But when you get down to the heart of what somebody is about and why some of those numbers may matter, at the end of the day, it's stories and people that matter. And I should flip that because it's really people and their stories, right? Both of them are important, but people first. When you are talking about people, I could fuel, and I'm pointing out some of our Idaho Central folks, we focus on what we call best stories, which are like, these are the most incredible stories of how team members were able to help other people, right? Helping people, find a way to adopt a child within 24 hours and pulling this loan together that should have never happened, right? And they're able to adopt this child. And like these stories are what fuel us, right? Us checking off another loan unit. Hey, guess what? Yesterday I needed a loan unit and then I got one today. Yay, right? Like that's not inspiring. Like it's a check mark, right? Like the reason that that's exciting is because we know the story behind why it changed somebody's life, right? Christian, when you sell a home, you're diving into that person's experience. You know why it's important because you're literally helping them get into their dream home or a place where they want to be, right? Like for sure the loan itself is great and the commission check's good, right? But that's not your big driver, right? It's helping other people. And I could say the same thing for each and every one of you, right? So sometimes we get that flipped around and we're like, well, we got to be all professional and businesslike and, make sure all these meetings have all the things that are checked off and talk about all the numbers because numbers are important. Numbers are boring, and I have sat through a lot of really stupid, boring meetings. And the meetings that I really enjoy are when we talk about people and their stories and why those numbers actually matter. Why we're going to hit those numbers next month, because here's the people that we impacted. Here's the people that made a difference, right? In, John, for you and helping protect our entire region here. I mean, you guys have so many amazing stories, right? That's what helps fuel you guys and what you do every day out there to protect and serve us. So thank you for doing that. That's what matters. And so when it's that way, then we can co-create together, right? We can really focus on those things. So people and stories first, numbers really are kind of boring. And then spending 90% of your time praising the good and 10% addressing issues privately. Right? I hate getting called out on the carpet in front of everybody. That's not really fun.
Everything you're saying is why I am totally unemployable. And I learned it.
You knew you had to be doing your own thing, yeah. Because it happens, right? It's actually really, really common. Typically to serve the leaders, ego or whims or whatever, right? To make an example, right? I can guarantee you'll get 3 to 4 times the results in any metric, in any category by doing just this one simple thing. Just praise the heck out of every single thing they do. I'm not saying oh my gosh, you put the stapler where it needed to go. That's incredible. Great job, right? I'm not saying that. But I'm saying, hey, you know what? For Kelly, man, I'm going to be honest. I wasn't quite sure if you could pull this off, this job. But I gave it to you, and here's what you did. Here's what was incredible. I'd probably tweak this next time, right? But here's what you did that made this job a whole different experience. Or photography, right? Is that what we're talking about with Kelly? Or Kelly, yeah. So we just like getting praise, right? For doing good. Because a lot of us, I believe we all have good stuff built inside of us. That's how we were built, right? Sometimes it just takes somebody to kind of help bring that out. Like Rick did with me, right? I was pretty low. I just needed somebody to kind of help foster the good. And then guess what? When you do something good and somebody notices, you kind of want to do it again.
Yeah.
And again and again, and maybe even a little bit better. When I'm constantly like, put the thumb down on me, I'll do it. I'll do it begrudgingly. I don't really want to do it, you know?
Michael, I would
Yes,
say
sir.
Make the praise genuine.
Yes.
You ever receive fake praise?
Mhm.
Failed 4 times. Hey, good job. You know.
Yes. Yeah.
So I've
Yep.
done that before as a leader, and as soon as I realized it and I started praising genuinely about real things, my team knows if I say good job, they know they did a good job. I just didn't say like, hey, good job. See you tomorrow.
Yeah. And I would also say like their character too. If you can address their character in something they do, not just like hey, you did the report, good job on the report, right? Like, man, I know you had to persevere. Like that was tough. Like that took a lot of effort, and I know that was not easy for you. I appreciate the extra work you put in, right? Not everybody would do that. Like that's true praise, to your point, right? That goes deeper than just like, hey, good job, or false praise, right? Nobody wants that. Like that doesn't feel great either. So good point, Aaron. Appreciate that. Invest in growth. How can you help your teams be the hero? And this kind of ties back into, honestly, Kelly's question. So that's why I wanted to run down to this real quick. What I would challenge you, Kelly, to ask of your team is obviously really good questions, but also like, what do they really naturally do good with? So I have a couple of the books in the back, but my son Henry and I wrote a book called Work Plus Love. And in that story, there's an example of, if it's me and I'm aiming for, probably the stop sign back over that way, right? If I did that with my right arm with the baseball, and I just had a whole bucket of baseballs, and my goal was to try to hit the stop sign or get close without like breaking a car window or hitting a car because it's a busy street. But if my goal was just to keep throwing at it, I could probably get pretty close, right? Like, I don't know how many times, I couldn't give you a percentage, but most of the time I could either get close to the sign, maybe hit a portion of it, right? Like pretty decent. If I did it with my left hand, that would look really awkward, first off, right? Like, I don't know how many of you guys are right-handed. Probably most of you, yeah, right? So it's probably the same thing for lefties. If you did something with your right arm, right? It's not your dominant, not your dominant arm, not your dominant trait, right? So if I'm throwing with my left hand, right, I'm doing this thing, it looks really bad, and I probably would maybe get close to it a few times. It would feel really awkward, right? Now, I could practice and train with this as much as I could, try to get it there and whatever, but it's never going to feel as natural as when I'm throwing with my right arm. Because that's actually what I was born to do, was to use my right arm, right? Like, that's what I was naturally, just grew up doing. And that's how it is with all of us. There's things that you naturally do. Christian, you might be more introverted. There's activities that you naturally love to do that would make me just go crazy, right? Like I would just be like, no, I don't want to do that. There's folks that I know and love who love working on spreadsheets for 8 hours a day. Like on purpose, right? Like that's their job, right? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'd go crazy. I'd make them crazy, number one. But I'd go crazy, right? Like I want to talk to people. I want to do stuff like this. But if you ask them, they'd be like, I'm not getting up there. I'm not talking to people. I'd rather be in my cube, right? And that's great. That's what makes us all so different. So Kelly, I would just, encourage you to go through what are the strengths for each person that they naturally have, and then how can you help develop and expound on those strengths, right? I still do spreadsheets, don't get me wrong. I just don't like doing them. And I actually find what I call a fit partner. So I have a coworker who loves all the back end stuff. Like she is all about spreadsheets and analyzation and graphs and all the stuff, right? And I'm like, well, what if I'm the promotion guy and I'm the guy who's out front and I do all the speaking and I do all this stuff, like, because she hates that. She's just like, don't do that to me. Don't put me up there, right? So we're a team. And I'm not using her and she's not using me. We're working together because I know what she's really, really good at. Now, could she say, hey, I need to take this course and I need to do all these things and I need to be better at public speaking, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I mean, she still has to do that from time to time, but she doesn't like doing it. And I don't like doing her stuff, right? So we work together. Not that it can't always happen, but a lot of times it can, of finding somebody who's really, really good at what they're at. We're taught from a very young age, unfortunately, to be like, to know everything but kind of be a master of nothing, right? Just be well-rounded, right? That's actually not what we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to be really, really great at a few things and like have that fire going and be like 110% in that direction and be like, oh yeah, I got to do that other stuff. But being well-rounded, like, what does that do for you, right? Because you're not really a master at anything and then you're doing things that you're not really, really, truly passionate about, right? So that's my challenge to you guys, is that the people that you have, that you work with, or even just the people that you see and know, man, how can you get them ignited to doing the things that they're super in love with? My oldest would edit videos for hours and has hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Like, he would just do that as long as he could. And he does, and he loves it. I would never do that. I don't have the attention to detail for that, right? But he does. And so that's what he's pouring his time and attention into. And then last, what's your legacy? How can you maximize success through others and help start an influence or a movement? And so this kind of goes back to the very beginning of, who are your influencers? I asked this question recently with a couple of teams because they're really wanting to move some things forward in their culture. And I said, so who are the people who don't have a title, who if they think something's really good, it's going to happen, and if they think it's really bad, it's not going to happen? Just by like their nonverbal, right? Because people, communicate 80, 90% nonverbal. They're the people when you like say something, so let's say they're a really positive influencer, like, okay guys, this new thing's coming out. They're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, that's great, right? They're your cheerleaders. And there's the other people who are your influencers, they're like, yeah, we'll see, right? We'll see about that, right? They're influencers too. And you know who I'm talking about. So it doesn't have to, it typically, again, isn't title. It's the people who help influence the other people, right? So if you can get to them and help bring them to your side, typically through acknowledging their strengths, typically through acknowledging that relationship. If you can help bring them to your side, then it's actually going to work and you're going to be able to move forward. You're not going to have the same uphill climb that you typically do if you're trying to make, especially a big change happen. And then how can they make the message their own, right? So again, kind of back to Kelly's message of how can I help them make sure that they care as much as I do? Well, they can't, right? I mean, they can't care as much as Kelly does with her photography business, or in the same way, I should say. So what is their why? Why are they working in photography? What are they really passionate about? Are there certain types of photography shoots that they love? Do they love weddings, but they hate the, I went to Sears, Sears Portrait Studio, felt backdrop thing. Like, do they hate that thing, right? Like, what do they love? What do they love to do, right? And how can I bring out more and more of that? How can I expose them to more and more of that?
And I have a comment for Kelly.
Yeah.
I think too often, maybe something is our strength and we've worked really hard at it and we've honed it in. And then somebody else is coming alongside us and we're training them and we're helping them. Well, the problem is we think our way is the only way. And so then we're not letting this person be creative with them, with their strengths. And so we want it to look like it looks when we do it versus how it looks when they do it. So
that's good. That's good. Yeah, so just to kind of reiterate that. Thank you, Terry. Is doing it, our own way, right? Or this is the way to do it, instead of helping take your message, take your heart, take what you're trying to do and let them run with it their own way.
that's right.
Right? Within by the right guidelines and bounds and stuff. Yeah, that's good. So, It's 8:31. So I did talk longer than I wanted to, but if you guys are cool with either staying, I know a couple people have to go, that's totally fine. I want to make sure I just maybe extend the time a little bit, see if there's any other questions that anybody would want to ask.
Could you repeat number 6 and number 7?
Yeah, for sure. Number 6 is invest in growth. And really it's how to help your team be the hero. A lot of times leaders, myself included, especially if I have certain strengths, we try to hero, right? We try to be the hero. And if your team can be the hero, if they're the ones who are really in the spotlight and making an impact, that's going to take you a lot further. And then number 7 was, what is your legacy? How can you help maximize your strengths? Or I'm sorry, how can you help maximize your success through others? And start a movement. Oh, Aaron, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of companies promote within their own team, maybe the supervisor role. And sometimes you have a peer that became now as the supervisor of their peers. How do you get buy-in from the peers that's now someone that they kind of have to report to, or there is a little hierarchy switch, and maybe they beat out another peer for that position. How do you get buy-in from the team, and how do you make sure that new elevated leader stays confident in their new role while they're trying to figure it out as well?
Right.
How do you help them and your team manage through that?
Yeah, that's really good. That's a big one. Yeah. Well, I will say for any new leader moving into any new role, but especially something like this, of course there's certain things you need to do, but I don't know anybody who's just like, oh, hey, we were working side by side and now you're my boss, like can just flip that switch. It takes time. And at least from my perspective, it's a good 60 to 90 days to kind of help transition that, to allow the new leader to come in, mostly for them if they're open. I don't know if this situation is your managing that person. But the best scenario is when that person is there asking a lot of questions and getting to know that person. Because again, when you're side by side with somebody, you feel like you kind of have this relationship, but it's a whole different level when you're actually managing that person now and you get to ask those questions of, hey, I want to help you be successful. Hey, I know we were side by side, but my whole goal is to help move you up. I know you wanted to move up. My whole goal is to help promote you, right? And get you up to that place. And for that other person, if they're, weren't selected, their goal, and it should be, man, my goal is to help this person who was just elevated above me to be successful, right? My whole goal, we were kind of battling it out, right? And this was the position I wanted. My whole goal is to help you look good. Because if you look good and, you are doing the right things, then you're going to move up again. And then I'm going to move up, right? That's the idea that it should be, instead of like, oh man, person totally beat me out and I totally should have got that job, and that mindset, right? That's going to cause a lot of damage and division, honestly, for teams. It's super common, right, to have that as well. So I think as a manager, seeing that dynamic, which obviously you do, I think trying to help both of them see that if they invest in each other, and then really obviously investing in that team, giving it time. Sometimes new leaders come in and they want to change everything. Sometimes new leaders come in and they're just like, my way or the highway. Yeah, we were friends yesterday, now I'm your boss, right? That normally doesn't go really great. So having that change, I think, can help too.
This can't always be done, but Thomas Tedder has 5 divisions, each with a manager. And to avoid that very problem, the managers are voted on by the division every month. Wow. And they get a raise of $3 or $4 an hour, but they got to perform because they're going to be voted in or out next month. So it seems to work really well.
The democratic process. Yeah,
that was sharp.
That's great. We have something. I love this, and I know a lot of different companies do something like this, basically, where you're kind of having this blind vote. But we have a culture view survey where we go through, and it's a blind survey where nobody knows kind of like who has answered what, but for each team, and then for overall, hey, how is the boss doing, right? And if culture's really good and boss is really good, hey, you get great scores, great feedback. And if you don't, then it's like, man, we got some work to do. And if people who do that consistently, then it's like, yeah, we need to move them out or do something different, right? So yeah, I think that's good.
yeah, in this leadership thing, I thought maybe I got a poor score. We work together, and we're in data mining business contacts, information. I don't think it helps Chris at all that every 5 minutes I'm going, this is sucking the life out of me. So inspiration is limited.
So he needs to be inspiring you, is what you're saying. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love it now. Yeah.
Hopefully it's only temporary.
Yeah. The data mining, yeah.
He just rolls his eyes and looks at his watch.
Yeah. No, I know you guys are a good team. So, any other questions or comments or anything you guys want to share? Carly, yeah.
And this is kind of more a personal question, like having a leader who has a business and has the vision, but also wants to, kind of to Kelly's question of like, you're scaling. So now I'm not just a leader like myself and maybe one person, I want to grow to a team. You know, what would be kind of like your single best next step advice, whether it's practical logistical or mindset, what would you say to make that switch from like one to many?
Man. When I hire anybody, I've hired a lot of people, right? I've been privileged to hire a lot of people. I've had to let a few go, and that's always like the worst part of the job, right? If you're a leader, like that's always the worst. The two things I look for the most are people with like an exceptionally high level of integrity, and they're willing to be held accountable. If I can hire people like that, I can train them anything, right? But those are the type of people that I want. Because if I have people like that, then I know that I can trust them, right? That's what we want. We want people that we work with that we trust. And we want to hire people that we trust, right? And that's hard to find. Sometimes you don't know that until you kind of like kick the tires a little bit and they're a couple of months in and it's like, oh boy, this isn't going to work out. But I can tell you the best people that I've ever worked with and for have like a super high level, I call it radical integrity and radical accountability. They're going to tell me, hey, I was 2 minutes late. I'm so sorry. I know you would never know, but it just would eat me and kill me to know, like for you to not know that I was late. Like that kind of accountability, because they just know inside, like they want to make sure that they're being honest with themselves and with you. So when you're looking for people, that's huge. And then again, what are they really naturally gifted at? There's so many different assessments out there, and I know there's DISC assessments and Myers-Briggs and different ones. I love StrengthsFinder personally. That's one of my favorites. We use a company called Talent Plus. They're super expensive, but they're really good, as evidenced by all Idaho Central people who have ever been hired. So I think that piece to me is really important, is knowing that I'm getting somebody in there who has the right talent set, but I don't care about skill set. I can teach skills all day long, right? If I have the right person with the right heart and they have the right, ability, we'll train the rest. So what's hard is a lot of times that none of those factors are included, right? It's just kind of like, hey, what's your experience? Oh, your resume didn't show that. I'm sorry. You're excluded, right? Like, oh, you need, 3 to 5 years of whatever. I've found personally that if I go based off of that other side, and I would also say your gut, right? If you know somebody in your gut is like, oh my gosh, they would be incredible on my team. Our values align. Like they just get me. This is really good. Like those are the people you hire, right? And if you hire somebody you don't, and you kind of get in your gut, like, maybe this will work out. I don't know. Maybe they were just nervous, right, on their interview, or I'll just give them another chance. Like 99.9% of the time, it just doesn't work, right? Either because it just didn't work out because of some of the things I mentioned before, or because I just didn't really like them. I know that's really bad to say, right? But as the employer, as a person, like you have to like the person that you're working with, right? It's kind of a big deal. It's a good thing you two like each other. Like that's a really big thing, right? Is because you're going to spend a lot of time with that person.
Well, he's good at ignoring me. So.
Oh, there you go. Well, that's good.
He does it so well.
Yeah.
But, It's been said many times that you are the sum total of the 5 people you hang out with most.
Yep.
They're a reflection.
Totally.
So if these people aren't the best people, get some new friends. But I find in my unemployable state of mind that I have some incredible friendships.
Yeah.
And I have the choice of who I hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more than 5. There's a lot of good people out there. You need to surround yourself.
Yeah.
Why hire someone
Yeah.
that is just going to be painful coming to work?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, that's so
you're
good.
right.
No, you're really, that's right.
Michael, we have a question online.
Okay, before I take that question, we are at 8:41, and if anybody needs to leave, I'm not going to judge you at all. But if you need to if you want to hang out for a minute, great. We do have some books in the back. If you guys want to snag a copy, you can. And mostly, I just want to say, if you do have to leave, I love you. Thank you for being here. Like, it means a lot to me that you'd spend your Friday night with me. Some of you I know really well, and some of you don't know as well yet. But I just want to say thanks. So I'll release anybody who needs to be released, and then we'll keep going. Does that sound good? Okay. What's the question? Drum roll.
Okay, this is from Caitlin. I've been reading the book, The Culture Code. One of the points it makes is how you can help build a strong workplace culture by making people feel safe through fostering connections and building bonds of belonging. What are some effective ways of helping members of your team feel safe through connection?
Oh boy, that's a really good one. Well, first off, if I don't know somebody really well, I love to find out, typically within the first couple minutes, like, what are they into, right? Like, what's their hot button? People are broadcasting it, right? Like, pretty much all of us are like, yes, I want you to talk about me and what I do and what I love, right? And so I love to kind of just drill down, and I'll even ask that question just flat out, like, what are you into, right? Like, what are your kids into? Whatever it is, right? And once I get them talking about that, I know it sounds kind of funny to make them feel safe, but they're feeling known, right? If they're super into skiing, if they're super into their kids and their activities, right? If they're super into buying local, right? If they're super into quality home inspections, right? Whatever it is, like, whatever is a big deal to them, I want to start asking questions about them, not to like puff them up or just make them feel good. My goal is to help to get to know Nels. Like, why buy local? Why is that a big deal? I'm not asking that because I know where this is going to go, Nels. I'm not. That was a rhetorical question. Yeah. No, it's true though, right? We all want to be known. So I wanna ask Josh about his incredible musical talents, right? Even better if I get to see him play, right? Like, so when I start asking those questions and what kind of got him there, like, when did that all start for you, right? So if I'm getting to know somebody, that's what I want to focus on, is what makes them tick, what are their hot buttons, right? It's a great icebreaker too. And then as I do that, I want to remember the things about them that are important to them, right? So remembering those special things, it could be, hey, they mentioned, yeah, my daughter's soccer game is next week. It's kind of a big deal. This is like her first real soccer game. And so we're going to go and do that. And so then when I see him next time, I'm like, hey, so how'd the soccer game go? Right? Because most people are like, oh, people are going to ask me questions and they're never going to remember, right? They're just talking to me to talk to me. But then when you make it real and you're like, hey, I actually cared about you enough to remember that detail and I want to talk to you about that because I actually do care about you. That's where people feel safe. They don't feel safe when you're just having conversation to have conversation, or when you're all about yourself, right? So a good rule of thumb for me personally, and this is something I'm still working on, is I want to talk about myself like 10 to 20% of the time. Tonight's a bad example. Different format. But if we're talking, I want to talk about myself 10 to 20% of the time, and I want them to be talking about themselves 80% of the time. Because my goal is to get to know them. It's not for me to not be known. I just want to get to know them. And as I do that, then they feel safe, right? And I think the other thing too is just helping kind of create an atmosphere to cut off things that shouldn't be happening and addressing them, right? So have amazing members who just are so good. But we've all experienced issues or different times where somebody comes in and they treat somebody poorly, they do something they shouldn't do. As leaders, and I would just say as humans, our job is to squash that as soon as humanly possible, because we've all seen and experienced things that should never happen in society, and everybody's just quiet because everybody's like, I don't know what I should do, I don't know what I should say. And all it takes is one person with that fire that we're talking about to step up and say, hey, that's not cool. You need to stop doing that. Hey, don't talk to her that way, right? Whatever it is, right? But we all stay silent because it's like, oh, this is super awkward. I don't know what to do in a public setting. I can't tell you how many times that's come across. And I'll be honest, there's certain times that I've done it and there's certain times that I haven't. And every time I don't, I'm just always like, dang it, right? Like you kind of, so helping people feel safe is standing up for them too, right? When maybe they don't feel like they can, stand up for themselves. So those are just a couple of examples. So, Carly,
You
yeah.
talked a little bit about connectedness and kind of a little caveat from my question was, one of my questions was, in an increasingly remote work environment, what is your suggestion or best practices in creating interconnectedness?
Yeah, that's really good. We use an app called Marco Polo. I do with my managers. And Heather's going to smile over here. So Heather's one of my managers, or at least for the next couple of weeks anyway. And so we use Marco Polo and we ask one question every 2 weeks. And it is video, so Christian, I'm sorry, you might have to kind of get through this piece, right? Yeah. Video, I think, is powerful. Have any of you guys used Marco Polo? You know what I'm talking about? Most of you guys do. It's really a fun way to help teams stay connected. It is, in person's best, obviously, right? If I can do something, which I'll talk about that in a second here. But even just asking one powerful question once a week or twice a week with any group on a Marco Polo, what's cool about that is that people can get to it when they can get to it, when they actually have time. Sometimes that's in the morning, sometimes it's in the evening, whatever it is, right? But asking, again, the right questions makes all the difference. And I'll tell you another thing, and this kind of ties back to Caitlin and your question. If you really want to get a team connected and they kind of know each other, but there could be another level that you could go, pick one person, right? If I were to do this tonight, and I'm not going to do this because I don't want to make everybody cry, but if I were to pick out Kristen and say, guys, what do you guys love about Kristen? Just one thing that you want to share about Kristen. What is the biggest impact that she's made on your life, right? If I ask that question in a group, there's going to be waterworks, I tell you that much, right? Every single time. Because again, now Kristen's going to be highlighted for who she is, and what she does, and what everybody means to her. Because Kristen, like a lot of us, may not know that. May not think about that all the time, right? I think about some other things. And so those questions are really, really powerful. If you can start off a meeting like that, which I've done a lot more recently, is let's pick on one person, right? In a good way, and talk about them. It's really powerful. The second part would just be, we call them coffee and connects, is connecting different people who may not work together as often. It can be a virtual coffee and connect if you can meet in person with folks, but just having a little connection time could be 30 minutes. And the only agenda is, hey, I want you to find out 3 things about this person that you didn't know before, right? Whatever agenda you want to do, or here's a couple questions to ask this person. That can be really powerful as well. Because again, you have the agenda of, hey, the only thing on the agenda is not work stuff. It's just, let's connect. I can't remember which general it was. It might have been, it was one of our more recent generals who helped through one of the many Iraq wars, made a comment. He said, if I had to do it all over again, before we started building our battle plans and working with all the different, departments of the military and putting all of our pieces together, I would actually have all of us go on a whitewater rafting trip for 3 or 4 days. Right? Because there's something about that bonding and connectiveness when you're doing something that is totally unrelated to whatever the mission is. Because now we get to connect as humans, and I get to know you, and I get to trust you a little bit, right? Now we can actually move forward with that, whatever we need to actually be doing. So sometimes we kind of put that on the back burner because we're we're too busy. That's not as important, right?
I personally always like to remind teams to always think positive intent.
Mm-hmm.
That person didn't come to work today to make your life miserable, right? But they assume. So like, oh, well, they just don't like me. Well,
Mhm.
you don't know what happened on the way to work, right? It's what you talked about earlier.
Right.
So assuming positive intent
Yeah.
helped me a lot.
That's good.
It's like, oh, they didn't do that on purpose to make my life miserable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's good. Any other questions online? Any other questions you guys have? Keeping you late. I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry. This is really good. Selfishly, I've really, really enjoyed this time. So what I'm going to do, are there any other questions before we wrap up? You guys good?
I have one more question. It's more personal for you.
For me? Oh boy, here we go.
A lot of times people have like mantras or scriptures or something like that that they'll kind of anchor to. You know, do you have something that's helped you sustain, you know, highs and lows that you kind of like anchored to? Maybe it's something that pops in your head throughout the day, something that's common for you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, it comes as no surprise that I carry my faith with me everywhere I go. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Right? That's just like a constant for me, because it's so true. Like there's only so much I can do within this flabby dad bod. There's only so much I can do here, right? Like I can only do so much, but with an external source, with his external power, right? Like there's nothing I can't do if he wants me to do it. And so that would be, I guess, my big thing is that whatever you're holding on to, you know, if it's your faith and you say, and kind of going back to the first one, if you say you believe something, what does that look like? Because there's a whole power source right there that allows you to do things that you never thought you'd do. I never thought I'd do anything like this, right? Like jumping way back when I, like just growing up and stuff, I never thought I'd be able to do something fun like this with y'all. So like that's a big deal to me. And so that's what helps me quite a bit. So appreciate you
Can I just
asking.
say that this decision of what you're about to do will not be one of the bad ones you've made in the past.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. So I am going to invite you guys, not everybody's going to be this way, but I'm going to tie this back to the very beginning. Again, some of you guys are like barely had the fire going, and hopefully this helped ignite some of that. My whole goal for tonight was to help encourage your flame, right? Help encourage that fire. Again, maybe you're in that middle stage where it was like, okay, I'm kind of there, but I definitely need some more, and this would help on top of that. Or you had the fire raging. You're like, cool, now I've got some better tools to help me, right? Keep this going. And so if you want to live out these principles in a deeper way, if you want any sort of help and guidance with that, I would love to connect with you. Like 30 minutes, half an hour, just shoot me a message and say, hey, Michael, I want to connect. No obligation. If I can help you further and I can kind of help coach you through those things, I'd love to do that. And if not, that's great too. But my whole goal and the passion behind what I'm doing here today is to help share that message. And so thank you, Nels. I really appreciate that shout out. And I just, again, appreciate your guys' time, your contributions for making this fun. And hopefully there's a couple things that you were able to pull away from it as well. So thank you guys very much. Have a great evening.